tonight. I got my laptop on, and I feel alright. I got a few joints rolled, and my munchies made. Got my headphones on, and I close the door, don't disturb me. It's time to stand up tall and say some things about the shitty world we're living in with the boys at Raconteurs News. To Raconteurs, to Raconteurs, to Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News, Raconteurs News. Oh yeah.
White radio today.
And good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News on this Tuesday. It is the 19th of June 2018 and we've had the World Cup start as well, so there's plenty of things to keep us distracted for the time being as well. I missed last night's show. We're ever so sorry. Gareth Ike apparently had to cancel on us because his missus gave birth over the weekend, so we didn't want to keep him away from his child. So congratulations to you, Gareth, and to your good lady wife. I'm assuming it's a lady. I don't want to be presuming her gender, but I'm going to make the huge assumption that she's a lady. Well, congratulations to you two, and hopefully we'll get that rescheduled for a little while. I just want to check, see if people can hear me in. Yeah, there we go. We've got people that can hear us. I just wanted to check that we're going out. We're going out live on Spreaker.com / users / Raconteurs News, and on raconteursnews.com, and of course on my Facebook page as well, where there's a link on Facebook Live. So as you know, I've been away for a few weeks. I'm a little bit recharged. In fact, earlier on, 10 minutes ago, I got my head down the toilet and I were not very well. So, well, let's just see how it goes. I know Webby's going to be joining us a little bit later on once he's finished work. He should be done for about 8 o'clock, I think. So he'll be along later on, and he'll be able to give me a little bit of a push along there as well. But anyway, in the meantime, let's get on with our guest. Our guest is is no stranger to Raconteurs News. In fact, he was only on last week with Paul Webster. Great interview. I listened to it today. I didn't listen to it at the time, but I did have a listen to it today, and it sounded cracking. It sounds like there's ever so much more to come from this gentleman. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce former police officer and whistleblower, child abuse campaigner, and all-round good egg. Good afternoon, good evening, John. How you doing, mate? Jon Wedger, how you doing, pal?
Hello, mate. Yeah, pleasure to be on here again.
Ah, brilliant, excellent. Well, like I say, I listened earlier on. To your interview that you did with Webby last week, and you got into some interesting subjects and things that were going on. But look, where do you want to go this week? Because
if mate, some information come to me, and I knew this anyway, and it was touched upon last week, and that was regarding the influence of Freemasonry within the police and possible in the frustration of investigations. Now, it really is a great unknown, and I can't really comment on it too much. However, the one thing I can say is that about 3 years ago, I was contacted by a recruitment agency which deals mainly with policing matters, and they get staff for police jobs and civilian jobs in the police. And they told me that there was vacancies for civilian investigators in the north of England on an ongoing inquiry. And one of the things they said to me, are you a Freemason? And I said, no, I'm not. I said, that's a very strange question for a job agency to ask. They said, well, we are not allowed to take on anyone who is a Freemason for this inquiry. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, because of problems they've had in the past. And lo and behold, it was the civilian investigators for the Hillsborough investigation. So there has been a proven link between Freemasons and some form of corruption, but nothing was elaborated on, you know?
When you talk about Hillsborough, we know that there's a lot of Freemasonry in there. We've done in-depth interviews on Hillsborough. We've had Tony Farrell on a couple of times, a former principal intelligence analyst at South Yorkshire Police, and he's told us a lot of stuff. And there were some stories that I was relating to today when I was listening to what you were saying, and it was regarding the way that the police close ranks, and that they will, if somebody steps out of line, and we had pretty much a lot of this on Hillsborough as well. But if someone crosses the line, then they're soon dragged back, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and it's not just in the policing remit. I was talking earlier on to a school teacher who had looked into kids that she was teaching, special needs kids, and corruption around the school's funding of it and how these kids are treated. And all of a sudden, she found herself at the centre of a police investigation. So they are used, not just within the police, but other sort of institutions and the medical profession as well. So somewhere along the line, there is a connection in which police are tasked to clamp down on these people. You know, I must say that I never really came across that so much when I was in the police. There was one occasion when I was sent to go and pick a fella up and really sort of ruin his day, as it were. And funny enough, I sort of knew the guy. And it was a bloke called Charlie Veach. I don't know if you recall him. He was a bit of an activist back in the, maybe 10, 12 years ago. And he'd been arrested just before the royal wedding. He was going to cause a bit of a scene. And they rounded him up in Cambridgeshire. And then the Met Police sent me up to deal with him. And at the time, nice guy. I liked what he had to say. I didn't see him as a problem. But, I can see how they do target people. I mean, I was fair with him. We got on well when, the matter got resolved. But when these orders come, they do come down through the ranks. They start off high up and they're sent down with orders of strict compliance. And being in a disciplined service as it was then, that's what happens. And not many people question it. But that's a minor matter. But my turning point was the cover-up of child abuse, and I couldn't allow it. That was just something that I found it appalling. It was disgusting, and in many ways it's evil. Anyone who not just perpetrates these crimes but allows them to continue really needs to have a serious word with themselves.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it, that somebody that can turn a blind eye to something like that, it makes you wonder what their motives are, because I don't know how much money it takes to be able to buy somebody, but if you know that something like that's going on, surely. I mean, I did you talked about Rotherham, but I broke an interview with a mother of a girl that had been taken into care in Rotherham a number of years ago and had been taken around and abused, and at that particular point in time, it was 2014. It was just when it all really broke. But at that particular point in time, the daughter was pregnant, and the baby was going to be taken without any straight into care, without any for risk of future harm, as they called it then. Now, I did an interview with her, which went viral as far as my videos go. And they managed to get some help, and we managed to be able to get the child back. So there's been lots and lots of stuff going on, and again, it's all it makes you wonder what sort of mentality somebody has to have to be able to turn a blind eye to something like that.
Well, also not just turn a blind eye, but then steam in on an attack on people they know are doing nothing wrong, nothing more than protecting their family. And what are these people and why are they doing it? What is their incentive? And a question that I always ask is why? Why are they doing it? And people don't tend to ask too much. I mean, the last 2 weeks I have been inundated, bombarded with people's testimonies. I've not been able to get through them all, and I've done my best to contact those that contacted me, and it's harrowing. You know, I'm probably dealing with just the same volume of crimes as when I was on a child abuse unit. You know, and I spoke to a woman today whose family are well-to-do, from the sort of middle to upper classes, and what this woman went through was just nothing more than appalling at the hands of her mother. And then she told me who her mother was. Now, I won't go into it without... It's very high up in one of the main political parties. And another one of the abusers high up in a big charity. And what they've done to not just this girl, but to many others, is nothing more than, well, it's satanic, it's evil. And these people have got themselves some really good positions. And this is one of the things that's consistently cropping up all the time.
Yeah, it does appear that way, doesn't it? That the more the more shocking it is, the more likely it is to be real. In my opinion, the more likely it is to be true. But you must have seen some real things when you were in the child abuse unit. Did you have colleagues that were working in the child abuse unit that were
you have a partner. I mean, how it worked back then, there was two teams, and they were good people, and they were split between there was 10 of us, 5 on each team, and you know, they were dedicated officers, but the work was so awful, and it was just non-stop. It really was. And like I said on the last one, I've worked on many specialist crime units within the police as a detective, and always really been looked after, but never on the child abuse teams. You are not looked after at all. And bless them, the sergeants do just as much work as the constables, which is very unusual in policing remits. The higher up the ranks you go, the less work you seem to do. Not in this. And we were all worked to the point of exhaustion. And I would say near enough everyone there was suffering from PTSD. Alcoholism was rife, depression, heavy smoking, anything really to comfort what you was dealing with. And there was no let up. And we were always told to watch the overtime. A lot of the times you had to go to investigations, serious investigations, and use public transport, the bus and the tube, because we never had vehicles. Yet when I've been on other sort of high up inquiries, you're given every bit of resource you can. So they were honourable people. But what happened is, and someone who'd worked in one of the orphanages out in China, I was talking to them, and there's a saying, for the life of me I can't remember it, but it's when someone that's working with these emotionally impacted areas, that they get a coldness to them. And it's not that they're cold people at all, it's just that a life support system kicks in mentally, and you just become very hardened to your environment. And this is how they were. We all become very hardened to our environment. And it wasn't a normal environment. It was an appalling environment, and we were right in the heart of it. And what would shock a lot of people, and it didn't in the end shock you, and it wasn't healthy at all. And there was no way that any of them would give us respite or the proper therapy or anything like that. And therefore, you can't do your job properly. And there should have been aftercare. There is no aftercare. And it is like these the orphanage workers, where they are just treating the kids like a commodity. At the end of the day, it's not their fault. It's just how they become. They just become so desensitized and hardened, and what you deal with becomes like a product, So
you didn't get any support. You didn't get any counselling, anything like that.
Byproduct. Obligatory counselling every 6 months. However, the purpose of it was not to see if you were mad, or that you was in any way incapable of work. It was really just to make sure that you are still able to work. So really all they wanted to do was to sign you back into work, make sure everything's all right, and then it's like an MOT for the next year. So never did I really come across any recommendations that this person should be removed, that they're mentally unstable. What happens is, in the end, people have breakdowns, and they usually have them at work, and I've seen that a couple of times. Some poor sod just absolutely breaking down in pieces. and it really isn't fair. But one of the things that since I've really been putting my name out and sort of offering help and advice to others, are the people that have been coming to me, and it's a plethora of people, across the board, and I'm getting a lot of response from Army military veterans getting in touch with me, and I met with the DVP, the Democratic Veterans Party, last week, and a real good bunch of lads they were, and they've just had enough, and they're just saying we are just fed up of how we've been treated. We're disgusted at how the country treats victims of abuse and treats our children. We said it's absolutely appalling, and we didn't fight wars for this level of disrespect in our own country. And it shows that there is this underbelly that the government really needs, I would say, to take notice of, because these are the guys that fight our wars for us. These aren't idiots. These are tough lads, and they generally unanimously have had enough of it all.
I can imagine so as well. We've had a couple of questions in the chat room. Super Leeds has asked, how can you ask him how do they cope watching that filth? And he's talking about the child abuse videos and not the England match. And he also said, did he ever watch a snuff movie? Did he ever see a snuff movie?
Well, you see, snuff movies. I'll deal with that first. They do exist. The British police always deny their existence. But there has been stuff that has come through when there's been joint investigations, especially with the Dutch, that they're a very, very real thing. And these things are worth a lot of money. But the British police always deny their existence. But I'm going to tell you a story, or an anecdote, really, about how you sit and watch, the pornography that we've had to deal with and how we cope. Back in the day, they used to grade images from 1 to 5, and a level 1 image would be the minor level, and the level 5 would be the very high level. This would be very disgusting images involving children, bestiality, and all sorts of very young kids. So if you've got a level 5 image, that's it. You are going to prison. It's big trouble. And I had a case where a fella had been downloading quite a lot of images. Now, it's just one of them things. You get psychometrically tested beforehand to make sure that you are stable enough to deal with it. But it's one of them weird things. If the people ever saw child pornography on the telly, I think there would be more of an outrage than there is now over it. If people really saw what these kids are put through, we hear the word abuse. It's not abuse. It's torture, and it's rape, and it's gang rape, and it's anal rape, and it's all sorts of things. And the same with the images. If people actually saw the images, I would say the majority of people would be sick to the pit of their guts. Now, I had one case, and a solicitor, a barrister in the Crown Court sentencing, was arguing his client on one of the images, and I deliberately downgraded it. And the reason I've done that is because it involved some children from the Far East, the Philippines, Thailand, and it's very difficult to determine kids' ages because back then these offences also were age-specific. And if a 14-year-old over here would probably be a lot more developed than a 14-year-old, say, in the Philippines. So in order to keep the charge, I downgraded it. And so therefore, this solicitor started questioning my judgment and wanted my whole decision-making to be held into question and therefore get the client thrown off. Now, one of the images, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it involved a very, very young child on an altar with a man dressed as a priest. Now, he may well have been a priest, and it may well have been an altar, or it might have been staged, I'll never know. But it was a very disturbing and appalling image. And the judge was getting very short-tempered with this barrister and said, if you want me to look at this contentious image, I will have no option but to look at all of them. However, I don't want to look at any of them. But if you continue to argue it, this is what will happen. So the barrister continued to argue it. And the judge ordered me to get the laptop put it in front of him and go through these images very quickly. And I did that. I set up the laptop, got these images up, and they were like the thumbnail type images, and I quickly spun through them. And all of a sudden, this one with this priest went by, and the judge said, "Stop there." So I stopped it. He went, "Go back, that image there." And he looked at it, and you could see the blood draining from his face. And, you know, they get a hard publicity, a lot of these Crown Court judges, for being nonsense, whatever. But I genuinely believe this man had never, ever experienced anything like this in his life by his reaction. And he said, "Is that what I think it is?" I went, "Yeah." And he went, "My God." And he stood up, this judge. He picked up a pot of pens from behind, you know, the bench where he was. He stood up and he threw them at the defendant and hit the defendant all over the head with his pens. They bounced all over him. And he just shouted, "Get this man out of my court." And you could see straight away that the reality of what was going on had hit this man, and it had absolutely hit him hard. So, but going back to how do you cope? Well, you don't cope. And that is the issue. And there is no help and there is no support. It's just another day and you carry on. And if you do have a wobble, you're just seen as weak. You know, get over it. You're mocked, really, in many ways. Get over it. And the way we always got over it in the police was we went out and we got pissed. Yeah. And that's how we dealt with it. And it's the same as the squad is. They say there's a drink problem. Well, they gave us that drink problem. This is how they deal with it. Get them pissed, you know, and that's it. But make sure you're back on duty, tidy and shaved the next day, you know.
Yeah, and so and it's sort of like a vicious cycle. What you're doing is you're creating victims, aren't you? Because these people, whether it's police officers or it's people in the military, they're going to be find themselves one day not having that, just having the drink and not having the reason why they were drinking in the first place.
This is what we're seeing. We're seeing, you know, our soldiers in prison. We're seeing them on the streets, you know, and again, if we take this further back, look at our victims. Where do our victims end up? They end up on the street. They end up in the prisons. They end up on the drugs. And we're just dealing with the after effects. And someone said to me, remember this, the police do one thing and one thing only. They pick low-hanging fruit. And that's so true. They don't get to the cause of it. I mean, I had a lad turn up to see me the other day, you know, only a kid, and he broke my heart because he turned around and told me he'd been in care since the age of 4 and had been abused, and he was trying to live a normal life, trying to get a job, but he had no parents, he had nothing, and my heart bleeds for him. It really does. There's no one tucking these poor kids in at night, no one hugging them saying they love them, and those that look after them, there are beautiful people that look after kids because that's what they want to do. And they want to spread the love. But there are others that do it strictly for a financial arrangement, you know, and that is where it's appalling. They've become a money-making machine, and it's disgusting. It really is. And it's racketeered as well, you know. I heard quite a few cases of, and I'm not knocking social workers, I'm not, but there were some social workers that also got themselves onto the fostering sort of scene, and would use their job as a privilege to work out the children they wanted. And it's like most things, you're going to want a nice kid in your house. You're not going to want some mad loony that's going to draw on your wall, steal off you, spit at you, swear at you, you know. But when kids are heavily traumatized, sometimes a behaviour that manifests. So they're going to want the nice little kids, you know?
Sorry about that. My phone.
It's all right, mate. It's all right. You know? So,
but
yeah, no, it's the whole system needs looking at, and all this week I have just been linking in, reading testimonies and speaking to victims of abuse, and nothing's changed since I left. Nothing's changed. The only thing is, I'll listen to them, you know. But I'm not a court. I'm not a barrister, you know. I've not got access to the intelligence indices I once had. And what just seems to be very unanimous is those like myself that stand up, they do get targeted. Yeah,
and it's endemic everywhere, isn't it? I mean, we've had whistleblowers on here, various. We had quite a while back. We had a surgeon on who had been done whistleblowing, and I don't know if Paul mentioned her. but she'd been sectioned, and we managed to get her out.
Well, I was in Parliament at a whistleblowers committee conference, and there was a cardiologist from the Midlands, and again they got him arrested. He exposed that people were needlessly dying in the hospitals, and when he spoke out about it, they accused him of stealing and got him arrested. I spoke with a priest who had exposed one of his bishops as fiddling with boys, and he was thrown down the stairs of a church he was in, beaten up and made homeless by two other priests. So it's going across the border. I had a GP local to where I lived, and he turned around to me and said, "You're a brave man." He said, "Because I couldn't do it, but I'm telling you now, if I did what I was told to do, I know people would die, but if I didn't do it, they would not pay me." So these GPs are being held to ransom. And he told me that the only thing he gets funded for now is diagnosis for cancer and diabetes. And they won't fund him for anything else. So the majority of problems that people come to, he doesn't get any money for it. And he's liable then for all the bills, the surgery, staff, the maintenance and everything. So it's in his interest to make a profit, and so his staff get paid, that he starts dishing out medication and referring people for chemotherapy. It's just appalling. It is just so corrupt.
Yeah.
People really need to wake up to this. Need to wake up to what's going on. But unfortunately, we live in times where people have very comfortable lives, and why should they worry about it?
Well,
why should it be a problem?
They either have very comfortable lives or they have very uncomfortable lives, don't they? And it seems to me that there are more people that have an uncomfortable life than a comfortable life, but they've still got a certain amount of comfort in the life to be able to not to not kick off, really.
Well, when I was standing out, I mean, that was one of the things that the Army veteran said to me. Are there other police officers? I said, there are, but not many. And the one thing, and I'm not plod bashing at all, because I did enjoy my time in the police and I worked with some very honourable people, but there's a lot of cowardice amongst them, and they're very frightened to speak out. They're frightened of getting sacked, they're frightened of getting banged up in prison, and they're frightened of losing their pension. And this is what it does. And what gets me is not really the ones low down that come for you. Someone has tasked these people. Someone has manufactured a battle plan to be implemented to go and get them. They're the ones that disgust me. And these are high-ranked officers. These are ACPO level officers that have done this, and they've done it deliberately. And they're the ones that need to be winkled out.
Yeah, let me just remind everybody, the Facebook live feed went down just a couple of minutes ago, unusually. I've put it back on again, but obviously everybody that was on there is not on there anymore, but you can find it again. Go back to my Facebook page and you can find the Facebook live, which is currently running along there. You can join in the chat as well in the chat room at raconteursnews.com. I'm here with Jon Wedger. It's Raconteurs News on the 19th of June 2018. It's just a few days till Heath's birthday as well. So Heath will be 48 very soon. So happy birthday to you in a few days, Heath. Corned beef. I'll send you a card if I can remember and be asked. Right. So, John, we were just talking, weren't we, about how people are comfortable. How are we going to get them out of this? Or does it have to be something that comes along independent of what anyone else says to them?
I think people need to find their voice. They need to drop the fear, and they need to stand up for what is right. And the other thing, you've got to keep yourself clean as well. Any bit of dirt on you, then they'll magnify it and use it against you. And that is a problem. That's what happens. That's what we're seeing a lot with the victims of abuse that have made these high-level allegations. They're all sort of being taken down for various offences. And you're seeing it at the moment with one of them who's, I think it's to do with the Westminster inquiry, who has sort of made an allegation and now the police are gunning for him. But the main thing I'd say is drop the fear. Do not be frightened. As long as you've got the truth, then do not be frightened and stand up. But you can't stand alone. You need to link in with others. And that's exactly what we've done. as whistleblowers, we've got together and we've all sort of linked in and sort of vouched to help each other when we can, you know.
Mm. And we do try and do that as much as we can here at Raconteurs News, and we do get behind certain causes. Listen, I'm really struggling. I've not been very well for a few weeks. I'm hoping that Webby's going to turn up in next 10 or 15 minutes and be able to take over from me, because I'm feeling a little bit sweaty and a little bit not very well. So. Anyway, hopefully Webby will turn up and he'll be able to continue.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
It's no problem. I had an operation on my leg a few weeks ago, and they absolutely knackered it up. They've completely knackered it up. I could walk before I went in, and now it looks like I'm not going to be able to walk again. So,
oh dear.
It's
sorry to hear.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a ball ache. But enough about me. Let's we've got you on for your expertise. So. Whereabouts shall we go now?
Yeah, I mean, well, what I'm trying to do now is to try and get together as many experts as I can as well. One of them is a forensic psychiatrist. Sorry, they did explain the difference. A psychiatrist who is getting together all the stats regarding mental health in adults and what is a link with that with child traumatic backgrounds, and it seems to be a 90% link. I'm at present trying to get together suicide statistics as well, and also drug addiction statistics, how much of that is linked. I'm trying to get a legal team together as well, because a lot of people want advice, which goes in the remit really of what the solicitor or barrister could give. I can only give my experience, but I was never a barrister and I'm not a solicitor, so I'm so tied in. But it's drawing together all the skills that we can out there and pulling it together for the right reason. I mean, I want to make it clear, I'm not here to undermine the economic stability of this country, the political stability, or hinder any ongoing investigation. Because the moment you do that, then you start getting the intelligence services going to their remit, and then they can kick into gear. So I want to make that extremely clear. And also in regarding to stuff that's not in the public domain, I've got no need to expose anything that isn't in the public domain. What I want is people that have suffered appallingly for doing the right things to come forward, get in contact, for good MPs out there to come forward, and for the people that have got the ability to move this forward to get in touch so we can change things and do something about it. But again, you know, this is really day one for me. I'm trying my best, but I need help, you know. I am getting it, but it's what I do with it. And all this information I'm collating, it's okay if I do something with it. If I do nothing with it, I might as well chuck it in the bin, because it's pointless. And people want results, and they speak to me because they want justice, they want results. So I'm going to put an appeal out there to anyone that has any professional expertise and time that they wish to invest, then please get in touch with me. I'll supply the details at the end. If there are any good, well-meaning MPs out there that actually would be listening, or if people know of a good MP, let's get in touch and let's maybe get petitions started. I mean, a lot of people say, well, what good is it? What's the point? Well, every journey starts with one step, you know. You've got to be thankful for the day of small beginnings. And to do nothing is not an option, you know. So I'm starting small at the moment, but hopefully, you know, I will move forward and we as a group will move forward. But I'm not advocating any violence. I'm not advocating any wrongdoing. I just want the abuse against children and the cover-up of abuse against children to stop, and those that have done it to be exposed. And there are a lot of people with a wealth of information out there, and I'm just saying to you, please do not be frightened, you know.
Yeah, yeah. We've covered this sort of abuse before. I know we've got a few questions actually that came up off before the Facebook Live went down before. Let's just have a quick look, see what we've got here. Bernie, I know, sent Or did. Commented. Must be this one. No, I can't find it. Listen, Bernie, if you can find if you can remember put your question in the chat room again, and I'll certainly put it to John. I'll certainly put it to John before we get away. Hopefully, Webby's going to be turning up very soon. Listen, I am really, really struggling. I'm sweating, and I'm.
Right, yeah. I mean, how long before Paul gets there? Do you want to go, and I'll just carry on my own? I mean, I don't mind doing that if you.
Well, yeah. Listen, we'll carry on anyway. We'll carry on. I'll still be here because I need to be here. But yeah. I
want to say something strange that has happened this week.
Go on then. You tell us something strange that's happened this week.
I worked with a guy for many years called Bill Maloney, and Bill Maloney had a production company called Pie Mash Films.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Maloney, probably a lot of people know who he is. He's the #1 anti-child abuse campaigner and activist. And Bill has got a number of videos out there. And this week, a lot of them went down and were removed off YouTube. They're saying it's due to data protection issues and should be online. Well, we'll wait and see. But one of them is a film that he made regarding a walk that I completed from London to Manchester to raise awareness of what I'm doing. And it's called the Walking Whistleblowing Detective. And it's only been up online, I think, about a month. And now it's been totally removed, not just by YouTube, but quite a few other servers. So, you know, there might be a legitimate reason or there might be a nefarious reason. But either way, if it is bad practice, and it just goes to show that they are already implementing a little campaign to sort of either get to Bill, myself, or the both of us. But I'll never know. I mean, I try to steer clear of going down the remit of conspiracy theories, but however, they do exist, you know, and conspiracy is part of law.
Of course,
you know, it's a statute law to conspire. So, what do you do about it? You know.
Well, you see,
I mean, the other thing is, I'm.
Go on. You carry on.
Go on, mate. No. I'm just saying that I'm, you know, doing my best to try and raise funds for a couple of charities that do go out and help the victims and survivors of abuse and victims of child prostitution. And there's, you know, whatever I earn, apart from the running costs, goes back straight to the charities. And they really need the help. And I'm not asked much money. I'm just trying to get, you know, a fair bit of some for them to make their life a little more manageable. But I'm now getting attacked via the internet. Someone put a YouTube film out against me today saying that I'm a fraud, I'm taking money. And I mean, I spend my days now, I've got no income at the moment, and I just go around at personal, you know, expense, my time and my money, helping the victims and the survivors of abuse. I'm giving them as much time and effort as I can and assistance, and it is costing me money. I'm not getting funded, and it's sad that I have to be denigrated for this, you know. And it's appalling, really. But I suppose it's just a byproduct of when your name does get out there, then these dissenters do turn up.
It's a byproduct of society. We seem to have engineered a society full of dickheads. Well, we do, don't we? I mean, come on, all you've got to do is it's like on these, you put something on Facebook and somebody immediately will underneath it will write fake or some you know, useless, pointless comment about anything, you know, and it just makes me wonder what goes on in these people's minds. But
also, what are they doing to help? You know, they're sitting in front of their computers doing sod all else. What are they doing to move forward? Nothing. Just dissenting and attacking those that are doing something. And not only that, they are influencing other people. And this is where it's also wrong, you know. And you know, unfortunately, I mean, people say to me, "What do we do?" And there's a lot of people, their heads are filled up with the image that the police are all corrupt, they're all Masons, the social workers are all going to steal children, the corrupt courts, and they always keep citing, yeah, but this happened in the case in Hampstead and all that. But I want to tell you now that if someone's trying to kick my door in with a machete in the hand, I'm going to call the police. If there's a serious crime I want to investigate, I'm going to call the police, because they did do a good job. Just because these things go on doesn't mean you can't use them, and you shouldn't lose faith in them. The same as social workers. I knew social workers that were so committed to helping children, at personal loss. But unfortunately, there is so much distrust, and some of it is rightly placed, but some of it it's not. It's uneducated. There's no thought put behind it, and it's putting people off, and it's putting people from actually. I mean, I'll give you an example. One woman got in touch with me, and I'm not going to say too much, but a child was being abused, and she didn't want to go to the police because if she reported it, that the police would take her child off her, and so would the social workers, because they all collude together because of what's been happening in certain cases that she's seen on the internet, namely the Hampstead one and things like that. And I just said, that's not the case. If your child's being abused, you need to speak to the police. You need to protect your child, but what she's doing is she's allowing the abuse to continue, and that's where the problem lies. You've got to use a lot of judgment and a bit of intelligence behind these things, and the child's safety must be paramount at all times. They must be removed from harm.
Hey, listen, a couple of people have made the point. You did say that you've got no income, but a couple of people have wanted to ask about your pension.
Yeah, I managed to get it. They didn't want to give me anything. I had to fight, and I had to fight very, very hard for it, incredibly hard, and there was a lot of heartache in that, and so much so that it was ruled that they had to give it to me, and then they decided to take that rule into a judicial review. However, the judicial review fell down because they were only going to argue against their own process. So I did get it. And it's quite strange because it was 3.5 solid years of pain and agony, financial and otherwise, emotional, the lot. Now, there was another copper who claimed very similar to myself. He was a bit more high ranking, but he dealt with, he was appointed by the government to look into certain celebrity cases. And he was pensioned off smoothly with no incident within 3 months. Yet mine took 3.5 years, court cases, appeals, and a judicial review to get there. So, it really is very unbalanced. But, yeah, you see, and what the police don't want to do, you see, years ago, the Home Office paid the police pensions. So they were justly pensioning people off when people were damaged, not fit for duty. There was no chance of them ever sort of getting better. They got pensioned off, and that was that. There was no drama. But now the Police Pensions Authority have got the onus for paying this. They don't want to pay a penny. So what they're doing is they're covering it all up. So when someone is going to their doctor and saying, I'm really suffering, take, for instance, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a massive problem in the police. They're getting seen by a psychologist and a psychiatrist, a trauma counsellor, all saying PTSD, not fit for duty. It then goes before an opinion that's meant to be independent by a police-appointed psychiatrist who always says the opposite, nothing wrong with them, and usually says it's down to self-inflicted alcoholism. And that's what they do on Near Enough every single case. And then they take it to a senior medical practitioner. They use the same one all the time, who gets paid £1,400 for a half-hour meeting. So you can imagine how much money this man is making in a year, just to dismiss any findings. And with me, there were 7 findings in my favour, and this man dismissed every single one. And so appalling is this situation. I heard of a case of a female detective. I think she was from a child abuse unit somewhere in the Midlands, who was so traumatised. She went through this process, and this doctor turned around and said she was nothing more than an attention seeker. During the appeal hearing, she walked into the toilet, drank a bottle of bleach and slit her wrists. And they still wouldn't pension this girl off. And she was carted off to hospital, and I think she got sectioned in the end. And this is what they're doing. There is a group now called the Injury and Duty Pension Authority, and they're all ex-coppers that have got together to try and fight this at a parliamentary level, that this practice is dismissed as got rid of. So, you know, they don't help their own, the police. You know, people say they stick together, and they don't. They will attack us worse than they attack you.
But what about other people in the police force? What about people's, you know, I would imagine you've got colleagues and you work together, and then when you see your colleague getting, you know, done over and completely hauled over the coals and for basically what is doing the right thing, do they not then stick together? No, none
of them stand by you. One guy went to my assistance and was told by a ranked officer, "You'll do well to stay away from Jon Wedger." So no, they don't help you at all. They got no interest in helping you, and they're frightened, and they all back away. I mean, subsequently, they've been in touch with me, and they've said to me, "Look, really sorry how you've been treated. We're appalled by it." But again, no one helped me. No one came forward, and cowards really. And again, I say that with a heavy heart because I don't want to rubbish anyone. And all that they have in their mind is their pension.
Wow. Yeah, it's well. Listen, I've had run-ins with police over years. A number of years ago, a couple of times. All things that I've not done anything wrong. It's just that our paths have crossed, and I've always found them to be arrogant, to be dismissive. You know, they just don't seem. It's either their way or no way at all. You know, it just seems it's a very rigid structure that they're working under.
Yeah. There's no sort of. That's why I become a detective, because I didn't want to be a uniformed officer. I didn't like it. I didn't like regimentation. I didn't like being told what to do for a start, and it just wasn't me. And unfortunately, the majority of the public do come in contact with the uniform patrol officers. And years ago, they had home beats, community officers. They've got rid of them all, and they've dragged everything down to the bare bones now. And these guys and girls are just running from one call to the next, to the next, to the next. They've lost so much experience. When I joined, people would stay at the same station, do the same shift pattern, do the same job all their career, you know, and because they were happy doing it, they were looked after. We were housed, we were fed, we were given medical stuff, dental care. Now they give them nothing. They've changed the pay structure, the pension. So they're going to attract a different sort of person. But the strange thing is that when you get in a situation like me, there are certain groups of solicitors that deal with the police all the time. And they all say the same thing, that when you deal with the police, two things they do. Firstly, they lie. And secondly, they obstruct. So paperwork will go missing, you know, and they'll just lie over what evidence is available, whatever. And this is the same situation I've got with my legal team at the moment. You know, the police have withheld every single, they've not answered every single request that my solicitors have made to them. They made something like 20 requests to them. They've not answered one of them. Requests for paperwork, also, they've just given them nothing. So if they do it to the likes of me, what chance does a civilian have? They don't have any chance.
Well, we've got a similar situation with, I don't know if you're familiar with the Jeremy Bamber case. We've had the people from his team on the show a couple of times. We've done a few shows regarding the Jeremy Bamber case, but that's another where Essex Police...
Was this in Essex?
Yes, Essex, yeah.
Essex Police, yeah.
Essex Police are withholding evidence that they know that they've got, they recognise that they've got, but they're withholding it for the appeal. Without any, they're even breaking court orders. I mean, what's the point of a court order? The court orders a police force to release documents. What is the point of that if they just ignore it?
Well, it gets even better because the policing minister at the time, when I was going through my dramas with the police, he had summoned Cressida Dick to a meeting in Parliament, and she just ignored him, and so did Bernard Hogan Held, just ignored him. And he just said, they just ignore me. And, he was second to the Home Secretary, Theresa May, at the time. And I just said, well, make them listen to you. And he went, well, there is a clause in Parliament, I can put parliamentary summons on them, which is what he had to do in the end, to get Cressida Dick to even answer to him. He said, they just ignore everything I say. And, you're seeing this again and again. I mean, when I was in South East London working, there was a case of Jacqueline Blissett, a woman that was murdered. And she was murdered by a man called Robert Napper. And he'd actually gone into the police station, Robert Napper, and said, I've killed someone else. And he was the one who actually killed Rachel Nickel on Wimbledon Common. And if you remember, they stitched old Colin Stagg up with it.
Yep.
And again, real blinkered approach, And the senior investigating officer, his parting words were, we will never be looking for anyone else. But at the end of the day, Stagg never did it. Napper did it.
No, yeah.
And this is how entrenched they get in their thought process. And there's been case after case after case of this.
Where they try to make the facts fit around what the narrative that they've got in their head. That's what they did with Colin Stagg, and also with Barry George as well. That were a similar sort of situation.
Yeah. Well, what you're getting here is they're stitching up special needs people, and you've seen it in the States. There's been quite a few high-profile ones there. Where someone's a little bit backward, and they're just getting tucked up. And I watched I was directed to watch the drama series Red Riding. That was on Channel 4, and it covers near enough everything we've been discussing, and very, very good drama. It's all about police cover-ups, paedophilia, stitching a special needs bloke up with murders that they were involved in, and you can see that there's an allegory of truth in this drama, and they've got away with it by putting this storyline together.
Yeah. And that's what they do. I mean, it's like we said. You said there's been a couple of examples in the States. I don't know if you've seen the Making a Murderer. Have you seen that documentary?
No, but I know of it. I mean, what we can't have the police policing the police. That cannot be allowed. And the IPCC was just a farce, and that was just retired coppers, just going back to the old boys network. And then what they've done now is they've got rid of the IPCC and they've got the IOPA. But they're in the same building with the same staff. So, they've just renamed it, and that's all they've done. They've even got the same postcode. So how are they any different? And it's appalling what they said to me when I made very serious allegations as senior officers covering up child prostitution, and then the bullying on me for exposing it. And all they did was the IPCC asked the three senior officers that I'd named if my allegations were true. They all said no, and they accepted that as an investigation, as an investigatory procedure, and then dismissed the whole investigation, and then wrote to me and said, this is what's happened, no proper debrief at all, one paragraph letter, and told me then not to contact them. And that's how they've treated me. And I've gone to the IOPA and told them this is appalling, I'm not accepting this. And they basically said, well, what do you want us to do about it? And you really think that you're in a parallel universe. I think, is this some sort of sick joke that I'm not meant to get? I just do not understand it. Yet with me, they went through nearly 10 years backdated emails on me, and I was the whistleblower, the informant, the victim, the witness on this, and they deemed it necessary to go through all my emails and investigate me. So, you know, when we say that there's no conspiracy, of course there's a conspiracy, and there's a very, very dirty one at that. And they really need to sort this out, and you cannot have the police policing themselves, their old mates, their old networks, their old connections. They can't have it. It's just wrong.
Of course it is, and it would seem like that would be common sense anyway. Listen, we've got to an hour, and I'm still surviving, so I'm gonna soldier on. Webby will be here soon. Apparently, he finishes work at 7:15. I don't know how long it takes him to get home and arrange himself and get himself sorted out. But he'll be along in. We're going to play a couple of records. It's Raconteurs News on a Tuesday night. Jason Holmes with you, your host. Webby will be along shortly. My guest, Jon Wedger, is going to be giving us some more great information in the second hour, so stick around for that. We're just going to play a couple of records and we'll be back shortly. If you're listening on Facebook Live, you won't be able to hear these records because it's all about copyright stuff, so you won't be able to hear them. But everybody else, you'll be able to hear these records. See you in a couple of minutes.
time if you know what they mean. Try shaking your box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Too many hands and too many pockets, not enough hands on heart. Too many ready to call it a day before the day starts. So you thought you'd like to see them healed, got Blue Pete at the stage and appeal for the poor, for the poor. So you thought you'd like to see them healed, got Blue Pete at the stage and appeal for the poor, for the poor. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking your box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean. A waste of time if you know what they mean. Try shaking your box in front of the queen, 'cause her purse is fat and bursting at the seams. It's a waste of time if you know what they mean.
And that's Heath Dweft, Flag Day, we reborn, my old mate. Like I say, it's going to be his birthday in a couple of days. Happy birthday to you, Heath, for, I think it's the 22nd, I do believe, of June. I'm terrible with dates and everything. Listen, I'm having trouble with Facebook Live, so it keeps turning itself off. And it's turned itself off, and now it won't turn itself back on. So if you're watching on Facebook Live, you're probably not going to see very much. I was still waiting for Webby. Webby's going to be here, well, hopefully imminently, so that I can then lay down and die on the settee behind. But we've got a great guest with us tonight, sharing some good information as well. Good evening and welcome back, Jon Wedger.
Hiya. All right, mate.
I'm good, pal. How are you?
Yeah. Get in there. It's been a very, very busy week.
Very busy. So, what's? I think you were talking last week about something that you were doing. Weren't you going to Cornwall and?
Yeah. No. I'm. Earlier this year, I completed a 300-mile charity walk, and it was to highlight the.
Okay, we seem to have lost John a little bit. Are you there, John? And of course he's not. We're having one or two little problems here, a little snag with Skype. It's been okay, but it's just these problems that we keep having. The Facebook keeps turning itself off. It's a right ball ache, having to turn it back on every pair of plates, but now it won't come on at all. So hopefully John will be coming back. Oh, there we go. So we've completely lost him now. Oh, great. Listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another record on while I see if I can reconnect with John and see if we can drag Paul in as well, if he's around. Let me find a record. Let me find one quickly. There we go. We'll do this one. Please walk.
Yeah, I walked from London to Manchester via the canals to raise awareness for the plight of police whistleblowers and to get justice for victims of abuse. And the reason being that if police whistleblowers are attacked and curtailed in giving their information, then victims and survivors of abuse never stand a chance. Now, the reason I went from London was the fact that that's where I worked, that's where the cover-ups occurred, and we've not heard of one case of child prostitution coming out of London. And Manchester, because at the time I was working very closely with another great whistleblower, and that's Maggie Oliver, the Greater Manchester Police detective who exposed the cover-ups in Rochdale. And the canals, because there was a lot of people, paedophiles, avoiding registering as a sex offender by going living on canal boats. So I decided to walk along the canals with my dog. And it was during that beast from the east, the worst weather we'd had in 60 years. And we did it. It was meant to take 12 days, but did it in 8 days because it was just so appalling, the weather. I just couldn't stand it. So just carried on walking. But this time I want to keep raising money. Some of the funds will be going to the lay community, which is a drug and alcohol rehab centre in Oxford, which is full of victims and survivors of abuse. And also the Swinton Lock Centre, which is the charity set up by Jane Senior, the social worker who exposed the Rotherham scandal. Uh-huh. So I'm doing my best to get money for these both worthy causes, and both of them are financially under attack and are looking at closure. So I'm going to be cycling with a crappy old bike that I found that had been dumped. I sort of got it working, and I'll cycle that from London to Penzance, which is about 350 miles, and then I'm going to swim around the entire outside of the Scilly Isles, the Isles of Scilly. Which I don't really know how far it is, but it's quite a way. So I'm trying to ramp up as much money as I can so I can get that cash off to these two charities. So that's what I'm in the process at the moment, and it's taken a lot of my time. So if anyone out there knows of any company that wants to offset any of their funds or whatever, or donate any money, then go fund me. / Jon, Jon Wedger, Wedger. You'll find the GoFundMe thing. But the other good thing with it, Jace, is that when I'm doing these things, I get a lot of the public's support. You know, I'll stop and engage with people along the way, especially on the walk to Manchester. You know, by the time I actually got to Manchester, a lot of people had heard that I was on this walk and were coming along and walking with me and going into pubs on the towpath. And by the end of it, we were actually getting, a round of applause when we walked in because people have heard about us. And it was amazing, the support we were getting from the public, which was totally across the board unanimous, but how many victims and survivors of abuse there were out there. And this is something which really affects so many people. And it is deliberately overlooked. And then what they do is they compartmentalise it, say, no, that's post-traumatic stress, or that's schizophrenia, or that's alcoholism, or that drug addiction, blah, blah, blah. But the root cause is child abuse. And this is one of the things that is deliberately being ignored. And one of the things I want to highlight. So I'm trying to get as many people from as many different disciplines and backgrounds that have been affected by child abuse together and trying to get their testimonies and in some way put it out, whether it be through YouTube or whatever, and show how this is affecting all of us. And at the moment, the perception seems to be, it tends to be those from the low and the working classes, dysfunctional families. And it's not. I was on the phone for hours today with someone whose mother was from high society, and there was another person involved is very high up in a political party, and she's got another relative that is very high up in a well-known international charity, and they're child abusers and abused her and her siblings, and they come from, you know, the upper class echelons. So it affects absolutely everyone. And again, like I mentioned last week, there was a lot of people were asking questions about Freemasonry and the negative effects of Freemasonry in these investigations and allowing these crimes to continue. And what I will say to that, Jace, is that it's the biggest secret society we need to look at is paedophilia. This is the ultimate secret society. This is where you get the real silence and the real brotherhood. And these people are really scratching each other's backs.
Well, listen, I think we've got Webby with us. Have we got Webby with us? Are you there, Webby?
I'm hoping so. Can I hear you okay, lads?
Listen, mate, you are a godsend because I need to go and be sick. So I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave John with you for now, for a minute. But I really need to go and vom. So I'm not feeling very well. So Webby, John, I'm sure you know each other.
Yeah, God bless you, mate, and I hope you get better soon.
I'll be back. Listen, I'll be back to wrap show up. I'm just need to go and get rid of this.
Sort yourself out, pal. Sort yourself out, lad. Right, John, you're going to have to brush me up here. I'm not sure what you've spoken about or where you're up to. So.
What I've done, Paul, I've just gone through really the last week's events and what a really, really busy week it's been. I mean, I've sort of put myself out and about and requested as much information as I can, and I'm getting information from all quarters, and it's mainly all from victims and survivors of abuse. But I'm getting a lot of interest coming from the veterans, the ex-military guys.
Yeah. What do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I'm telling you what, I met with a group called the DVP, the Democratic Veterans Party, and I've always made a point of saying what I deal with is not a religious issue or a political issue. You know, this is a matter of well, it's evil, really, and it can't really be pigeonholed. It's across the board, and I don't think anyone will take ownership for paedophilia. It's everywhere and affects everyone. However, I met and engaged with these chaps, and what struck me was what a professional outfit, what a decent bunch of guys, and how appalled they were at not just how I've been treated, but how the policing institution, how it treats its whistleblowers and its victims of child sex abuse. And they are absolutely disgusted with it. And that couldn't be put in any stronger terms to me when I met with them. And they were sort of vouching to do their best to address this on a political parliamentary level. And you see, again, you know, you can only work with the tools you've got. And what tools have I got to work with, you know? And this is the other thing I'm after, you know, those that are in a position of privilege and power that really want to assist and come forward and assist. Yeah. You know, if there are good MPs that really want to put their name to this and really do risk their careers progressing any further, then please come forward.
Definitely, because if they're going to highlight this, then their careers, well, as we know, politicians' careers now, it's over. It's absolutely over if they're going to put the name to this. But again, John, it's about doing the right thing. It's not about anything else but the right thing. If it was your children, you'd want somebody to do that right thing. And you've touched on it loads, John, about they put people in that fearful position where they've got family to worry about, where they've got children, where they're still then worrying about their bills. And as I've said to you, John, so many times, and I'm sure the listeners are sick of hearing it, you can't pay for these bills. So it is putting an end to a vile thing like paedophilia and standing up and being counted. But you're standing up and being counted on so many other fronts.
I mean, this is it. Things will never be the same again.
No.
And once you stand up and you be counted and you say no, your life changes.
Yes.
Now, if I was to be asked, are you in a better or worse place? I'm infinitely better for doing what I've done.
Yeah.
It's taken its toll on me physically and mentally and emotionally and massively financially.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's a sparkle back in my eye. When I look in the mirror, I actually do, albeit a worn out guy, I see a good guy.
Yeah.
And when people are promoted and put in these positions, how are they gauged? Now, for me, there is no better love or whatever attribute you might call it, is when someone shows love to a child that isn't their own as if it was.
Yeah.
And I mean love in the sense it's meant to be used,
Yeah.
And that is a person I will follow to the end. That actually melts me when people do that.
Yeah.
When they show no judgment, but nothing but pure compassion and love. These are the people we should be putting in place. When we are putting people in place with negative attributes, not positive ones. Years ago, there was a lady that was a victim of abuse, and I prosecuted the crime, and I got her husband put away for 15 years. He was a vile, vile, evil man. And this woman, initially I thought she was very naive, a bit wishy-washy, and actually failed to protect her children. But what it turned out, this woman was nothing but honest. And throughout the trial, all she relied on was her honesty. And even to this day, it's nothing but pure love and honesty. And now, when I speak or I meet this woman, I just see someone of absolute strength, pure strength. Whereas before, it looked on as a weakness because she's not tough enough. She's not prepared to, I don't know, maybe manipulate the truth, whatever. She was not going to negotiate with the truth. The truth was the truth. Even if it showed her in a bad light, she didn't care. She was a good person and she relied on the truth. And it was incredible how the situation changed and she came out of this, the victor, and a very proud, strong one as well, because she had the truth. This is it. And if they are relying on lies, which is what happens with these institutions, they are lies, they are dogs, they're devious.
Yeah,
do you know what? Shame on them. Shame on them. That in the end, they're not going to win.
Exactly. I can see that. You can see that forming, John, as we go along with this, because they're not even bothering to. They're not even bothering to try and hide anymore. They're just saying the bollocks, the complete and utter bullshit that they're saying in mainstream media now. It's almost like you are watching a sitcom or something like that. You don't. You watch Prime Minister's Question Times. It's not real. It's not real life. You're not talking about the subjects that we're talking about. I've seen people again over the last couple of days posting that, Jeremy Corbyn's the man. He's going to save us all. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. I just can't see it, John. I can't see how to change that.
It's not going to happen, and we shouldn't put too much faith and emphasis on these people. Because, it says, doesn't it, by their fruit shall you know them.
Exactly.
And we're going to need a dramatic change because this has to stop there. Even with Corbyn, there was so many, without being political. However, the group I'm involved with now for many years, a lot of them have collated a lot of information from their professions.
Yeah.
And there was many question marks about him not exposing the child abuse and the cover-ups of it that were going on in Islington at the time.
Exactly.
And where was he when that? And this is what we're seeing all the time. And it always comes down to child abuse. They are covering it up. They are like we're seeing it with our celebrities, with our singers, and it is slow. I mean, Mark Devlin was a former Radio 1 DJ and has put out some tremendous work. And I've been in communication with Mark, and we're just discussing information that we know on people, and it's just disgusting that these people that have been put out there as being like demigods, people that we should follow, and even put up by the BBC and all that as being almost saintly, and actually they're just degenerate, pervert paedophiles.
Well, it's a lot of faith to put into one party or one person in particular, because nothing's ever changed in every. Yes, things might be slightly less worse because the Tories are completely ramping up everything at the moment. They want to just try and get everything done and dusted. But I know for a fact, Justin Walker and Eddie Alder, when they were doing the Chartist movement, they were talking to the likes of John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn when they were backbenchers, and they were both. I don't know if you've heard of the Bradbury Pound, have you, John?
Yeah. I've got one.
Exactly.
Well, I'll say it's a copy of one.
Right.
But yeah, I know, and I've
Well,
I sat down
they
and
spoke
with
to them
Justin
too. Yeah, they spoke to both of those two as backbenchers, and they put their names to it. Now, Jeremy Corbyn does not want to know when Justin wants to speak to him. John McDonnell doesn't want to know. Why? Because that Bradbury Pound, in its essence, not particularly the Bradbury Pound, but what that Bradbury Pound represents, as in credit, national credit, take away the banking system, that would fix the whole of the financial problems, because you have to forgive the debt.
Well, the other problem we got, Paul, is that my children, they range from 27 years down to 18 years.
Yeah.
One of them is disabled, so he's been given disability accommodation. However, the others are at home.
Yeah.
They're earning. One of them is earning an hourly wage that I was earning in the early 80s when I was a teenager doing morning cleaning.
Jesus.
And back then, a house you could buy for 25 grand. You can't buy a house around here, where I live now, for nothing less than 300. And I'm talking crappy old 1970s built council houses.
Yeah.
So how on God's earth are they ever going to leave home and move forward? And I think we're heading for a major crisis, because our youth, due to the greed of the governments, and also those people that were always boasting their house has gone up and then they increased their property portfolio and everything else, they've priced the next generation out of ever owning any property, but not just having, physically having a property, but also what goes with it, getting married, having children, retiring, progressing our society. Our birth rate must be plummeting, because a lot of the kids I know now, none of them are having children.
No.
When we would be probably on our second kid, they get with a girl, they go and get a dog, because they won't be able to afford a child, won't be able to give up work and everything else. But this has got to crumble. I mean, I'm looking at it not as an economist or anything else, just as a man with common sense and a father and a concerned citizen. We're not just letting our children down regarding the stuff I'm on about. We're letting them down for their future. We are depriving them of a future.
Definitely.
And also, our youth don't give a toss for politics. They're not interested. Not interested whatsoever. They've got a very naive, ignorant attitude towards politics, and this is quite dangerous.
I think we've got a couple of generations that have just found it too easy, if you know what I mean. The what they call the millennials, which seems to be anything from 82 or 80 onwards. I've got 8 years on that, so I came along in the 70s. Miners' strikes and stuff like that all around where I live. That split families, and the relations between the two areas have still never. The relationship between the two areas themselves have never healed. Possibly never will.
But the other thing is, when a kid left school, and we're probably similar age. When you
an apprenticeship, you could do an apprenticeship or anything like that.
And the company you work for, they'd straight away put you on a training scheme. Yeah. You were given clothing. You were given holiday allowances. Yeah. They had sports clubs. They had memberships to certain things that free. They had a cheap bar, a social club, a pension, and you had a union, and access to solicitors, and you had holiday entitlements straight away, bang. and you could pretty much, unless you really cocked it up, stay there for as long as you wanted.
Exactly.
But now 0 hours contracts, appalling wages they're giving them. You know,
when I look at it, John, they've got the desired outcome. We do not manufacture anything. We don't output anything. So therefore, we can't. As we stand now, we hardly engage in an economy other than buying. And this consume, buy, die attitude is this is going to be.
But I know lads that are in their late 20s who can't even fix a plug.
Yeah.
They've got no idea. Dig a garden, you're wasting your time. They ain't got a clue. You know. Whereas when you're seeing, the migrants coming over, especially where I live, we've got a lot of Lithuanians, Romanians. You know, the young lads there, they can fix cars. They all do their garden. You know, they've still got that rural ability with their hands.
Yeah.
They're clever lads and lasses as well. And it's a shame because that's how we used to be. You know, it's so upsetting. You think, what have we done to ourselves?
Well, the opposite end of the scale, the opposite end of that scale is these people who are following people who are doing these marches, singing "God Save the Queen" while waving an Israeli flag. They absolutely haven't got a fucking clue what direction they're going in, John. Not a clue.
I just get so sad for our kids. I look at them and covered in tattoos, the weight problem. And everything else, and it's so sad. It really does upset me, and I feel like getting hold of them and saying, but what we've done is we've detached our children away from any source of wisdom. Yeah. And they did this with the indigenous cultures in order to control them. You know, that they controlled their access to wisdom, but so they put them in the care system, or they got rid of the elders. We got like the third generation now. Of kids growing up who've never had a dad. Yeah. You know, whoever got their mum pregnant never had a dad, and same before that. So they've got no chance of having a sit down and a bit of wisdom from their granddad or their grandmother, teaching them all the old skills, because that's totally and utterly gone.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing in that. I've been able to, just because of seeing my dad do jobs, and I mean, I was changing plugs when I was 4. You know, my dad had showed me how to do things like that before I was 10. So you don't have that now.
I had a lad with me today, and he'd been in the care system since he was 4. He's 18. God bless him, and he had a hard time in the care system. And again, it's broke my heart listening to his story. And he said to me, "When you're doing some building work, can I come and watch?" I said, "Of course you can come and watch, son." He said, I want to be like you. I want to learn stuff. And when I get that lovely attitude, it gives me hope. Mm. And I sat there and I thought, that's good. And I'll happily show you, son, because that's why I'm here. But I'm thinking, that's the job your dad should have been doing, and all that. And I'm not blaming anyone, because things break down for many, many reasons, and I'm not. But I really, when our society breaks down how it has, it really upsets me, because the only people who suffer are our children. Yeah. You know, and then we are setting them up to fail. And this is what we've done. And if this is a game plan, Paul, if this is what they've wanted, do you know what? What a bunch of bastards.
I agree. And
how evil is that? There is no benevolence. And what God are they praying to if that is their mindset?
Well, the thing is, I think you've got two separate issues. I think you've got the people who are praying to a God. It's certainly not the God that you're taught about Christianity, or maybe, in any good part of any Bible or Torah or Quran, whichever you want to read the good bits. It certainly doesn't appear to be that God. But what you've got the soulless bastards in between that are willing to sell that soul for all their rewards here and now in black and white, in material goods. Yeah. Because I'm right, I mean, I had it myself only a couple of weeks back. There was a general meeting, John, and my boss stated to all the staff that all it was about was figures.
Yeah.
That's all it was about, figures. It doesn't matter that there's anybody getting hurt, then anybody dying.
Well, I'm going to give you a classic example of that, and I might have gone through it last week. One night, whilst on vice patrol, picked up a 14-year-old heroin addict girl who was prostituting herself in a very rough part of London.
Yeah.
Right? She was riddled with scabies, and I think she might have had contagious hepatitis C. Right? And I was told, get her out the effing car, because they'd have to deep clean the car.
Yeah.
And also, then the car goes off the road. Therefore, the figures for the amount of prostitutes arrested that night would actually plummet. And it was all about figures. And this is people's lives. And it's just... And then I'm in the wrong for doing what I should be doing. But, you know, when you look back at the history, it's always been the same way, always. And you get the same thing. I get it all the time, John. Why didn't you tell me this was happening? And I thought, well, what would be the point telling them? They wouldn't do sod all and help me anyway. And you get the same ones. I would have helped you, but there's always a but. You know, one of the biggest words in the British language, isn't it?
Yeah.
If and but. You know, and again, so you become very self-reliant. You know, and if someone wants to come on board, you know, this journey I'm on, come on board. But I'm warning you now, you're gonna get hurt. It's a painful journey, and really, I'm talking people out of helping me, but I'm not. I'm saying the reality.
You've got to give it them. Yeah.
Yeah, this is how sick this society has become, that they will rubbish and attack us. And it is. And again, you know, the same in your game. People are just a commodity.
Yeah, you're right.
That's lives, you know. That's someone's son or daughter in there, you know.
That's what I mean. We're seeing them at one screenshot in time, if you like. When you look back through the history, you see them. You see a lot of them that they stood no chance, John. You know,
exactly.
That system's bad enough.
Yeah.
When you have got parents who have said things to the kids like, "Let me know what you're doing, but don't get caught." That's giving a child complete permission to do whatever they like because they said so.
Well, you know, and there's worse cases than that. There's one fella telling me, he said his dad was putting him through house windows at the age of 5.
Yeah.
You know, his dad was a junkie. He went into the care home, and he said the first thing they did, someone stuck something in my mouth within 5 minutes of being in that care home. And he's a heroin addict now. He said, what chance did I ever stand? And when you talk to the fella, there's no hatred or harm in him. But he's just a victim of what they've created. And I'm absolutely gobsmacked that he's got the ability to sit down with decency and show me compassion, put his arm around me, give me a hug, and talk like that. Because how he's been treated, if a dog had been treated like that, I'll put my hand nowhere near a dog.
Exactly.
This shows the strength of you know, of what we are as decent human beings, how we can overcome this. You know, and there's a lot of victims and survivors. And I spoke to a brave one today, and what she went through was horrific. And she said the last thing I would ever do would be to harm a hair on a child's head. I have broken the circle, the cycle, whatever it is. And this is what we should be doing. These police commissioners, the likes of Cressida Dick and all these other ones, they should be coming. Peter Fahey and Manchester should be coming to people like me and saying, John, what the bloody hell have we done? How can we put this right? And I'll happily tell her, you know, and you know, a lot of these are graduates. They went for accelerated promotion, you know, and what's it done for them? It's turned them into dickheads, idiots, cold-hearted morons.
That's exactly what the fast track system does. It takes someone who's a yes man and fast tracks them right into the position where they want you. Where they want you for whatever reason it is. The lower end, it's to get rid of staff. At the higher end, it's to implement things that, you know, basically, from the government down, management are being handed shit, and the management's handing that shit to staff and saying, "Can you polish that for us?"
Well, I'll tell you something. When we look at rewards, I'm a friend of Jesus, right? But I see him not as what has been hijacked by religion. I see this guy as a real tough man that didn't want children hurt, and I believe his job was down here to protect our children, right? And no, I'm not going to live forever. And this life I've led has taken its toll on me. So I'm not going to make real old bones, and I don't want to. This is no place for the old, this country. It really isn't. But I know that in my dying moments, I'm going to have a moment of clarity, and I'm going to be shown what I've done with my life. And I'm pretty certain, up to this date, I'm going to be very happy with what I've done. And I'm hoping that if I get the backing of a lot of people that are listening and out there, we can achieve a lot more, and we can do it by being decent, good human beings. And we can, and that is strength. That really is strength. And we can show them that we can.
It's what it comes down to, is for good people to just not do nothing. Do something. Yeah. Just do something.
I mean, I've even had it this week because, the last thing I ever want to sound is conceited or egotistical, and I really pray to God that never happens to me. Unfortunately, it can be a byproduct of getting a lot of publicity, and I'm very much aware of that. And I like to think that my little team, Bill Maloney and likes them, keep me in check with that.
Yeah.
I don't lose my way with this, and keep continuing to do the right thing, and to do what is expected of me on every single level.
Yeah.
And it's not an excuse to sit there and do nothing. And also, we've got to this stage where a lot of people are coming forward, but they're coming forward post-event. They're coming forward once they're retired and they're comfortable. Yeah. Now, it's good that they come forward. God bless them. But sometimes that's not enough. It's happened, and you watched it happen.
Yeah.
The time to have done something was then and there. And but God bless everyone that does come forward, and I'm with them all the way. And the system has to be there to protect us. And if it doesn't, and we are attacked, then those attacking us need to be hung out to dry. And they do. And they need to be named, and they need to be shamed.
Let's look at it this way, John. If someone in the police can't come out and make a statement that the police are covering up paedophile and prostitution rings, if the police can't do that, what chances of the police being to protect any other whistleblowers?
But what chance does any member of the public state?
Exactly.
When they want, and again, at least you used to have front offices, 24-hour manned in police stations with a desk sergeant.
Yeah.
They still have it. You go to New York, they still have it, and probably the rest of Europe, they still got it. Shut all our police stations down.
As open twice a week.
Yeah, and then they open these community offices. They were a front. The front door was always locked.
Yeah.
They weren't. They were made out. They were operational. They weren't. And police stations were always put on high streets.
That's pretty much what's happened. That's pretty much what's happened all around all the local.
And one of the times people would come forward and report the allegations that I'm concerned with, there used to be a disproportionate amount of them would do it on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Right? They would go in New Year's Eve because they wanted to start afresh. Yeah. And a couple of them said, I went in there and there was a big queue and I walked away and I left it for another year. And they need to have someone there that's personable that would listen to them. They don't need to pick up and be held in a queue. And, and then someone very inexperienced has got no idea what they're going through.
No.
That can't be allowed to happen. And people are paying good money to be policed, and they're not being policed. Exactly. This is a fraud.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, John, the requisite for being a policeman is not to understand the law, unfortunately. And
well, they don't. They don't, you see. And
no, that's what I'm saying. They're not expected to. And just going there, and I went into the police station, as you well know, when I was reporting my property being stolen, I had to go through the police commissioner just to get an interview with a police constable. And the police constable agreed with me that this is theft, this is criminal. I said, I know. I said, that's why I'm reporting it. So after an hour and 15 minutes, she walked off into the back to speak to a detective sergeant. She come back out, and I looked at her, and I went, civil matter by any chance? And she nodded. She just nodded and said, I'm so sorry, but he's got more experience in the job than I have. I said, but he's not legally trained, is he? No, he's not.
And well, funny enough, I had probably the best detective inspector anyone could have ever had, and he was very on board with all this. and he took quite a few cases that we're seeing from being the case of Holly Gregg. He took it right to the top of Scotland Yard and said, "Does anyone know about this case?" And they just told him to back away. And he also did it with the Hampstead case as well. Took it and said, "Look, this is appalling. What's going on?" And they said, "No, back away." And this is what you get all the time. And then you're targeted, and then an attack comes on you, and they send in their attack dogs. Yeah. So I can't, in many ways, I don't want to give people a hard time, because I can understand that you have to survive in the environment you're in. And your family are number one priority. And what sort of a man would allow his family to become homeless and render himself banged up, for instance? Yeah. That is a fine line. But for me, if I didn't do something, these little ones were going to get hurt. And it become a personal mission for me, It become a calling. And every time I shut my eyes at night, I just couldn't sleep, because it was eating me away. And it was breaking my heart. And I just had to do something. And I did. And by God, I got punished for it. And do you know what? I don't hate some of them, because they don't know what they were doing. They were just naive. They were just doing their job, so they thought they were told to do it, so they did it. The ones I've got a problem with, Paul, are those that instigated this attack, that knew what they were doing, that deliberately went out to destroy me. Yeah. And I know that this went right at the very top of British policing, and it did. And you know what? Shame on them, and shame on any company that employs these people once they leave, just to further their business as well, because they've got this big name under them. And we see it all the time. Yeah. A lot of these top casinos will have retired high-ranking officers in their compliance. The banking system will have, the mobile phone system. Loads of them will. Yeah. And for me, the first thing I would say, well, what have you done to curtail and sort of stop abuse? And if they couldn't prove it, I wouldn't have them. Yeah. But there are good ones. I mean, Mike Veal, the Chief Constable of Cleveland now, a good man, a very good man, a Chief Constable standing up and not backing down. And he was attacked by members of the House of Lords. People that are leeching off the back of us, getting paid a phenomenal wage and attacking this good man.
Well, it's probably because he's going to upset them. He might be knocking on their entertainment, really.
Yeah, their pastime.
But this is what it's coming down to, John. It's coming down to the point where, like you and like myself, you got to a point where you had to make that choice whether you carried on or you came off and went under the radar again.
Yeah.
It comes to a point, John, where you've not got that option. You just don't have that option, because it has to go against everything that is inside you. I was taught to be a good man. I was taught to look at others and treat others how you want to be treated. If they're treating you badly, then you don't want to be treated badly. So
I had one of the most prestigious Sunday papers. I'm not going to name him at this stage, because I just think it'd be a bit unfair to. Not that I've got any loyalty to him, because I haven't. I'm appalled by him. And he said, "This is a brilliant story. We're going to run with this." And then he rings me up 3 days ago and said, "I actually don't understand what you're on about." And in the end, I told him where to go. I said, "If you can't see the merits of what I'm doing, then you can F off. We're no good for each other." And a total reversal of his attitude 2 weeks prior. Total different. Yeah. And I'm thinking, shame on you, you tosser. Yeah. You total tosser. Why? And it's because it's going to upset them, and they're just going to do as they're told, and this is what we get. But their money's not going to save them at the end of the day, and it's not. And they're privileged that they think they can get away with it, but one day they're going to, again, like the rest of us, be on their deathbed, and they're going to see they've sold out. They're sold out, and nothing going to help them then. But that's if you believe in what I believe in. I mean, a lot of people don't. I had, bless him, some phenomenal cab driver drove me back all the way from Crewe. The train company got to drive me home because they'd screwed up my ticket.
Right.
And this fella went into a story. I don't know why he went into it, but he told me he'd been abused, and it was very ironic. And I told him my story, and he told me his story. And he was badly abused in a home, was given back to his father, who abused him even worse, him and his brothers. He then watched his father murder his brother in front of him.
Oh.
And they were too frightened to speak out. His dad got away with it and went on to just reap havoc with all of them. And I turned around to him and I said, you know, he said he died, my father, and I was by his side. You probably think I'm weak for doing that after all he put us through. And I said, well, you know, he's going to hell anyway. And he went, but I don't believe in any of that. And at that moment, I sat there and I thought, I bet you don't, mate. I bet all them times you called out for God to help you and no one came, nothing. You were continually beaten and you probably prayed and no one helped you. Yet this man had nothing but compassion and love. And he said, I can't let it destroy me, John. He said, I cannot let it destroy me. If I do, I end up like my brothers who are heroin addicts. Two of them have committed suicide. And I know it's because of the abuse. He said, I can't go through life hating. And again, like I said about this woman, that man, people might think he's weak. That is the strength that I've never encountered. And I think I wish I had that man's strength and his compassion.
Yeah.
And I just thought he was a phenomenal, beautiful individual for having that, loving him, really, you know.
Well, like I said, from the backgrounds we've both got, you see it so often that, you know, once it's that kick dog. You wouldn't go away that kick dog normally, but then you do find these people who have got that empathy. They know that what happened to them was wrong, and they also know that doing that to somebody else would be as wrong as what happened to them. But there are those people that conveniently, maybe convenience not the right word there, but become that permanent victim. And then they pass it on to somebody else, and then they become the victim, and so on and so on. But the system itself is the design of this system breeds that. You know, taking it when you've got profit driving children being taken from families, you're already on a slippery slope there straight away.
Yeah, and that is it. And this is what's happening. It's all profit driven. You know, there's a lot of money to be made out of these kids, either whatever way you look at it.
I mean, I've got good friends, really good friends who foster, and when I talk to them about these situations, the first thing I want to tell them is that there are good foster parents and there's good social workers, and I'm not saying there aren't any of those things. What I'm saying is the industry itself is profit-led. So the factor is that if there is an area where there's going to be a high percentage of possibility of children that are going to end up in the care system, then they will pursue that care system and they will promote it.
Well, let me tell you something now, and this might be controversial for a few people. One of the people that I had a lot of dealings with a couple of years ago was a woman called Camilla Batman Gellage, and she ran Kids Company, the children's charity in London.
Yeah, she's the big woman, isn't she?
The big woman, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you now that woman was stitched up. Right, because she knew what was going on and she became vocal about it, and they stitched her up. Now, she was getting money from the government and she was putting it where it should have gone. There's a lot of rumours and all that, but I'm telling you now, a lot of it is bullshit. And she would occupy a building as a squatter and not pay business rates, so that money could go direct to where it was needed. 40,000 children under her governance. When they shut her down, and there was a deliberate attempt to shut her down, and I can go into that at a later stage, and it's quite a story.
Yeah.
So much so that I did add to her autobiography, and they removed any mention of me in it. And the BBC put a ban on her getting any advertising for her book. There was a chapter 19 was about what I knew and my involvement with her, and it was removed on purpose. Now, Cameron turned around and said, we will be taking over governance of these children, and they will be looked after in the same manner, right? They did absolutely F all. And I went with an investigative journalist from the TV, from one of the main channels. We went round various sort of outreach groups for children in London. We said, have you had a surge of young people coming to you since Camilla was shut down? They went, yeah, loads. The government was meant to support these charities and help them. And I said, have the government helped you? He said, no, not a bit. I said, how do you cater for it? And this is going on in London today, in a first world country. Their way, this is what the government said, that they would look after their kids. These poor charities got no money. Their way of making sure that child got housed at night and was away from harm, they would give them a night bus ticket, tell them of certain routes, bus routes, that did a massive loop for about 3 to 4 hours, told them to get on that bus, get on the back, here's a ticket, and get 4 hours sleep. And that is today in this country. And we point the finger at India and the Philippines and all these others. And this was David Cameron's way of dealing with the backlash from that charity that he deliberately shut down. And it's disgusting. So no, and again the media, you know, they're not reporting on any of this. They're not, you know, and they will highlight. A politician said to me, John, what they'll do. There'll be a wrong 'un within government or wherever it is, and there will be a board which is black with one little speck of white on it, and they will focus in on that white and show them as good. But you will be a white board with a little tiny speck of dirt, a bit of black, and they will home in on that deliberately to denigrate, you know. And again, this is what these people do. They totally and utterly misconstrued everything.
Listen, guys, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we're just about out of time. So I think it's about time we did a quick little wrap up at the end, just a last 30 seconds apiece or whatever, just to anything that you want to get out before we have to leave.
Yeah, can I just say that we set up Jon Wedger Foundation, Jon Wedger, Wedger Foundation. I'm putting an appeal out for anyone that can assist me in any way, even if it's victims with that anecdotes of what they've been through. It can help. If there are professionals out there that have experiences of how much suicides are attributed to child abuse, social wills are attributed, if there's solicitors out there with legal experience that want to help, if there are intellectuals out there that want to help, anyone that has got the tools to help expose this cover-up, please come forward. I've had a massive response from the ex-British military veterans, and I am absolutely blown off my feet by the support they've given me these last 2 weeks, and may that continue. But if there are those from the intellectual professional realms that can give their knowledge and their wisdom and their assistance in moving this forward, then please go on the site, get in touch with me or a member of my team. I've got a little team now I've got together. If there's anyone that wants to volunteer to help, come on board, and let's see if we can take this to a parliamentary level and get this filth stopped.
Brilliant. Yeah. What about you, Webby? You got any last little words you want to say?
Not really. I'm just getting carried away with the conversation again, like we did last week.
Webby wants his dinner.
No, Webby's had his dinner. I'm fine. No, it's what we were talking about again, John, isn't it? Everything that we're talking about to do with paedophilia and abuse from children. We both of our careers have seen what kind of people that can produce, but it's not always the bad ones. There's a lot of good in there, and those good people that are coming forward now, especially if they can help you out to help other people, then I think that's the way forward. And obviously Raconteurs News will promote everything that you're doing, John, because us lads here, we do this because we know there's something wrong, and we try and tell people. a lot of people didn't want to hear it, but you know.
Do you know what, Webby? That's just tough.
Yeah,
and if at a minor level I insult them, I really don't care, because
Exactly.
it ain't about. They'll have to get over it. This is about the victims of this horrendous crime and the potential victims that need protecting, and that's going to be my focus. So if there are a few flaky, sensitive people, I really don't mean to upset or alienate anyone, but you're going to have to get some big shoulders and get over this one.
Yeah.
You know.
And that seems like a good note to end on. Thank you very much to our guest, Jon Wedger, and a big thank you to Paul Webster for coming in and saving me halfway through. I was getting a bit green behind the gills, and I was feeling it. But so thanks a lot for coming along and bailing me out there. Thank you to you people listening, everyone in the chat room as well. A big thank you to Super Leeds, who sent me a very nice Get Well Soon card this week, so I really, really appreciate that. Thank you very much. A brilliant gesture. Someone going out of the way to actually written in it himself as well. So big thanks to Super Leeds for that. We'll be back next week. That's it for Raconteurs News this week. We'll be back next week. We've got Francis Richard Connolly on Tuesday. I don't know what we've got on Monday, but we'll have a look on. Keep checking out the website and the Facebook page and all the other usual gubbinses. We'll see you again next week. Ta-ra a bit. Bye.
I am a 1 in 10, a number on a list. I am a 1 in 10, even though I don't exist. Nobody knows me, but I'm always there. Statistical reminder of a world that doesn't care. Arms unfolded, old malnutrition dulls my hair. My eyes are black and lifeless with an unprivileged stare. I'm the beggar on the corner, will no one spare a dime? I'm the child that never learned to read, cause no one spared the time. I am a 1 in 10, a number on a list. I am a 1 in 10, even though I don't exist. Nobody knows me, but I'm always there. Statistical reminder of a world that doesn't care. Murderer, the victim, I'm a license to a gun. I'm a sad, bruised old lady in an alley or in a slum. I'm a middle-aged businessman with chronic heart disease. I'm another teenage suicide in a street that has no trees. I am a 1 in 10, a number on a list. I am a 1 in 10, even though I don't exist. Nobody knows me, but I'm always there. Statistical reminder of a world that doesn't care. Starving third world mother, refugee without a home. I'm a housewife hooked on Valium, a pensioner alone. I'm a cancer-ridden specter, discovering the earth. I'm another hungry baby, I'm an accident at birth. I am a 1 in 10, a number on a list. I am a 1 in 10, even though I don't exist. Nobody knows me, but I'm always there. Statistical reminder of a world that doesn't care. I am a 1 in 10, a number on a list. I am a 1 in 10, even though I don't exist. Nobody knows me, but I'm always there. Statistical reminder of a world that doesn't care. I am a 1 in 10, a number on a list. I am a 1 in 10, even though I don't exist. Nobody knows me, but I'm always there. Statistical reminder of a world that doesn't care.